The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the policy or position of ONT's management, staff, or board of directors.
Detroit basketball.
And welcome back to the Views from the Sideline. I'm Joey Tysick. Across from me, Malik Hill. And again, we're in the thick of the sports season. NFL, NBA, college football playoffs kind of, getting closer. Basically just a month away. And so things are getting crazy. We got actually some good teams for the local area. The Pistons are doing all right. The Lions still just being the best team in the NFL at the moment. And then the college teams kind of showing some life here and there. So starting off, the college football season has officially ended for the Michigan State Spartans. They lost to Rutgers in a very ugly game, kind of how it seems like a lot of their season ended up going. And I don't know, going into the season, I was very positive because it was similar to the Pistons where I just needed to see signs. And I saw some good things from this team. I think, there's some good signs on the offensive side of the ball. Aiden Childs at times shows you what potential he has. Nick Marsh looks like one of the best wide receivers in the country. And, the ground game is still pretty solid. But overall, I don't know. I thought I was going to be more complacent, I guess, and just be okay with how they did during the season. But unfortunately, in the end, I still kind of ended up disappointed on how their season went. They had some games where I thought they should have been a little bit more competitive. The defense was atrocious at times where they just giving up points here and there. And once again, now that we're getting to the offseason, I just wanted a bowl game. We're not going to get that. And I'm nervous going forward of where is this team going? Because all the recruiting numbers that I've been seeing are not good at all. And so
they were able to flip a running back from Alabama.
Yeah.
He was committed to MSU, flipped to Alabama, and then flipped back today. So that's the one positive.
Yeah.
But
other than that, they're not drawing in recruits. I don't know if it's just, because of the program, all the changes with staffing, or if it's just they're not working hard enough. I hate to even use those words, but something's got to change. I know Michigan State has not been good in recent years, but they're still one of the biggest programs in the country still. But they're not showing like they are. And that's, I think, the frustrating part for a lot of people.
Well, honestly, Jonathan Smith was never known as a big-time recruiter at Oregon State. He got the perfect guys for his program, and they stuck out in the Pac-12 because they played a tougher brand of football. So he was able to sneak and develop some high-level guys. Now he did hit Aiden Childs,
right?
Who was a late riser and almost a 5-star quarterback by the time he got to Oregon State, and he got a few 4-star guys. But yeah, Jonathan Smith has never been the high-level recruiting type of guy. He's more of a developer and a program builder, which is something he'll have to fix within his staff.
Yeah, and that's I think the nervy part is we didn't see. I know it's year one, so you're trying to give some slack, but you still wanted to see, or at least I still wanted to see some more growth than I think what we saw. So it was a little bit rocky, and I'm okay with the developmental mantra. My only problem is that that's starting to become Michigan State as a whole. Tom Izzo, D'Antonio, they're all guys that, we're not going after the stars. We don't want the big names. We don't want the distractions or whatever they think. They want to build.
Even if it's a highly recruited guy, it's a guy that needs work.
Right. They want to build the right guys. I'm starting to get a little skeptical
A lot of the guys haven't been the right guys.
And it's just making me a little nervous. Now, we went through that with the Lions, where for a while we were nervous with the Lions kind of doing the same thing of like, no, we want to get the guys that fit our system. That's turned out to be a wonderful thing. So it can work, and we've seen it with, some of like Tom Izzo's teams. We've seen it in the past where, he does better with less talent. But at the same time, like, it's a different game, and, things don't work the same way especially with NIL. Like, it's even harder. So even some of those middle tier guys that you could go after and just say, oh, they fit into our scheme, even those guys are getting money to lower level teams sometimes, and they're going to flip and go different places. So I think Michigan State's biggest problem as a university, athletics wise, is just adjusting to the times. It feels like they sit back and think that they don't have to do anything differently than what they've been doing. And to me, it just rubs me the wrong way a little bit, and it makes me a little bit nervous going forward. So
I think even when they've tried the few times, it hasn't worked.
Yeah.
Like, they haven't done it right.
Right.
Mel Tucker was a push in the direction of what college football was becoming.
Yeah.
But it ended up being a major downfall. He under-recruited high school players.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't develop them. And those are some of the guys left that he had are still on this team.
Right.
And he just focused on the portal.
Yeah.
And he hit on the portal like one time.
Right.
And
yeah, you definitely need a good mix. That's like I think that's the hard part.
He could do one thing very well, and he wasn't like a high level coach, and he didn't focus on high school recruiting well enough.
Yeah. So on the season, I'm actually more disappointed than I thought I would be, at least at the start. Because like I said, I was just here for the ride. I just wanted to, maybe have some fun with this team. But the way they were down the stretch especially just was disappointing. And I think there is still a lot of room to grow. And I'm already going to have to be more critical next year just because we're going into year 2 of this regime. And already I feel like there hasn't been enough progress of what I wanted to see. And I know, it takes time to do these things, but it's concerning at the moment. But on the other hand, you have the Michigan Wolverines who were down in the dumps.
Some weird things have happened.
And then
in the past week and a half.
Yeah, it's like a week and a half, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You guys, it's crazy. Got the number 1 quarterback and then beat your rivals for the 4th time.
Listen.
How you feeling, Malik?
If we did this last week, I would have come in and been overly realistic. I would have predicted like a 38-14 win for Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
I did not think that they were just mentally cooked like they like they are.
Uh-huh.
Like, they come off a 50-6 win over Northwestern, their best win of the season. They score more points by far than they've scored at all. The defense is cooking. It was a nice home win to end the season where everybody thought it would be 6-6.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on to next season.
Yeah.
Then you get Bryce Underwood to flip. He shows up at that game. The vibes are good. The recruiting is picking up some.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting some really good players. And Orion Day goes out and just tries to prove a point to the whole world that Michigan isn't tougher than us.
Right.
We're the tough guys, and we're going to win on our terms, which are actually Michigan's terms.
Yeah.
And it just completely backfired. I mean, they're running the ball straight into Michigan's – their last really good, like, high-level players left are Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant.
Mm-hmm.
And you're running straight into them for over half of the game.
Yeah. Michigan didn't have much this season, but they had one of the best defensive lines in the country still.
And you target Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka 4 times in the first half.
Yeah.
Their kicker fielding misses 2 kicks. Will Howard throws 2 picks. The second one when they're driving to try and take a lead over Michigan.
Yeah.
Like, I watched the game with my stepbrother who was in town from Tennessee. And every time something happened to Ohio State, I'd just look at him and I was like, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is happening in this game?
Yeah.
And it just kept happening over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Once Michigan threw the pick on the goal line, once Davis Warren threw that pick, I thought Ohio State was going to take advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And they just couldn't.
Yeah.
They just could not take advantage of what they had.
Yeah.
And Dominic Zavada kicks a 54-yard field goal. He kicks a short one to take a 13-10 lead. And then Ohio State just falls flat on their face.
Yeah, it was really...
Yeah. And number two,
really
Ohio
odd.
State, it's the most embarrassing.
And they were at home. Ohio State was at the toilet bowl.
It is arguably the most embarrassing loss in rivalry history. I just, when it was over, I just laughed for like 10 minutes. I didn't understand what happened.
Yeah.
And
now from an outside perspective, spectator, jeez, this game was awful. Like absolutely atrocious. I hated that I was watching it, but because I
missed
like
field goals, mistakes, just stupid
I like
football.
seeing Ohio State lose. But man, this was hard for me to even sit and watch. And I'm just like, I'm kind of the same as you. I'm like shocked and awe. Like these guys have one of the best wide receiver classes every year, and this year's no different. And they're just not doing anything. Like, don't you want to embarrass Michigan
Listen, man.
after what they did the last 3 years to you? There's how many 5-6 players on Ohio State that now went 0-4 against Michigan in their term? That's crazy.
Listen, Ryan Day wanted to embarrass Michigan, but he wanted to bully them.
That's not embarrassing.
He wanted
That's
to.
It's dumb. It's really dumb, and
It was one of the most puzzling things.
I thought he should have been fired like on the spot. Like one of those things
Listen.
where they say don't come home. Like they should have just kicked
If
him out of the
they
stadium.
if they weren't making the playoff, that probably would have happened.
Yeah.
I think he probably needs to win the national championship to surely keep that job,
Yeah.
because that was coaching malpractice 101.
Yeah. And you think about the amount of talent that he's had in the last so many years.
He's risen the talent level from Urban Meyer.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's gone up even higher.
Yeah. And he's starting to become one of those guys that just can't. I mean, one,
It's in his head.
he can't beat the rivalry game, but they've come up short in big, meaningful games in the playoffs too.
Michigan has beaten them 4 different ways in 4 different years.
Yeah.
And it's in their head. And now Michigan has all this momentum. Today is early signing day.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan has all this momentum. They're flipping guys.
Yeah.
They're getting close to a top 5 class.
Mm-hmm.
They've got Bryce Underwood.
Yeah.
They're expected to be much more talented next year.
Yeah.
And Ohio State has to come to Michigan.
For once, Michigan might be able to reload nice and
Like,
easy.
Now you lose your top. You lose Will Johnson, Mason Graham, Colston Loveland, some first round picks.
But it feels like the defense has been easier to replace the last couple of years because they've gotten so good on defense that they keep bringing in good defensive
The
guys.
development is there.
Right.
And then like Wink Martindale completely like made everything fit in the second half of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And a few days after Michigan beats Ohio State, Sharon fires Kirk Campbell.
Yeah.
Exactly what Michigan fans wanted. Like he's not playing around at all.
Yeah.
And everything is looking up for Michigan after a 7-5 season that started so terribly.
Yeah. That's why I said it's wild that like this much could happen in this short amount of time where it was just Michigan had no hope. And now Michigan fans are now excited for next season.
Like it's mind-boggling, really.
Yeah.
Like I have to give the season like a B at the end of the day because like everything is looking up at this point.
Right.
After it started so poorly.
Mm-hmm.
And you winning that game against Ohio State just flips everything.
Yeah.
And then you add on the recruiting and Sharon making right decisions in terms like with his coaching staff now.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
This type of stuff never happened for Michigan when I grew up watching this team. These things didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And things are it's wild.
Yeah, and now it's like again, you don't want to get too amped up about it because it's a long way to go, big off season again.
But the hope levels are higher than they've ever been.
Right, exactly. And so now there's hope that Michigan can rebound and get back to winning football again and competing for a college football playoff again, which is crazy. So good on them. Hopefully Michigan State can maybe somehow take something from that and learn from it.
Yeah, Michigan will probably play some team in the Gator Bowl. I'll watch just to watch some young guys, but
Yeah.
that the bowl game doesn't even matter at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about like looking towards next year.
Right. And so what we have now is a pretty crazy college football playoff, and that's the last thing I want to touch about.
And conference championship weekend is coming up.
Yeah, so that's going to be actually a lot of fun. But the bracket right now, and this is obviously all projections, is just wild because I forgot how the bracket works, and that you get appearances from all the conferences. And so right now we have Oregon as the 1 seed. They get a bye. Texas is the 2 seed with a bye. And then SMU and Boise State, 3 and 4 with byes. Then you have 5 is Penn State. They'd be playing against Arizona State in the first round.
Yeah.
Then you have Tennessee versus Ohio State. That would be a fun matchup.
The one thing about the 12-team playoff that I am excited about is home site games to start.
Yeah.
Seeing these big like top teams have to go to the other team like that, I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
That it doesn't just start at neutral sites. I
Mhm.
want to see those teams go to each other's schools.
Yeah. Then you have Alabama, Notre Dame, which a lot of people are saying is almost a lock.
That's
at
been
this point.
predicted like for the past 2 or 3 weeks. People think that's going to stick.
Yeah. And then unfortunately for Indiana, they are projected to get Georgia, which is just crazy.
Yeah.
The season that Georgia's had. So that'd be the 10-7 matchup. Are you more or less excited by the college football playoff as it's expanded as the season's gone on? Like, have you gotten more excited about it? Because I'm kind of more intrigued.
I've gotten more intrigued because there's been parity.
Yeah.
There's not with 12 teams there was going to be more options on the outside, but the fact that SMU had this major surprise season, the fact that Boise has a chance to be top 4,
right?
Indiana's surprise season, they're most likely going to be in the playoff.
Right.
Seeing these different programs get a legit shot, even though it's 12 teams, you got to win like 3 or 4 games if you're one of the bottom seeds to win.
Right.
But seeing all these outside schools get a shot, Arizona 10-2 going to their conference championship, I've been waiting to see stuff like this in the playoff. It's not just the same Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, the same 4 or 5 teams being recycled every year.
Yeah,
it's going to be something different, and I'm excited to see what unfolds. I'm still not a super fan of the playoff.
Yeah,
but like I said, them having to play home and away in the first couple rounds, or I can't remember if it's just the first round or the first 2. But them having to go home and away to start is exciting to me.
Yeah,
and I'll be watching. Listen, I'm a college football junkie, so
right.
No matter what happens, I'm watching. But it's been very interesting.
Yeah, I think the only concern, as always, is when you get teams that are like SMU and stuff, or even like in the first round projected right now, Arizona State versus Penn State.
I actually think Arizona State would have a chance.
You think so?
Yeah.
Okay.
But because Penn State's offense isn't the most explosive.
Right. But that's, I guess, what you would get nervous about, though, in some of these matches is could there be blowouts?
Indiana, Georgia is the one where it's like,
yeah, you're going to find out a lot.
But then you see Georgia Tech, even though that's a rivalry.
Right.
You see Georgia Tech going to Georgia, and they have no problem going up and down the field. So
right. So it'll be interesting. I'm excited. I'm definitely excited to see Boise State because I like watching Ashton Genty, but I think they would have a chance of either Arizona State or Penn State as potentially would be the matchup, I believe.
Yeah. Speaking of Ashton Genty, he's 341 yards away from Barry's record, I believe.
Yeah.
For like the regular season plus a postseason game. I don't expect him to go that crazy, but
you don't? In 2 games?
I mean,
because there's 2 games.
Oh yeah, it's more than just one game. I forgot.
Yeah.
But it was the 12 games and the bowl game for
Right.
Barry.
Right.
So
So if you just count
Yeah.
his first playoff game, I think he could do it.
yeah, it'd be a weird calculation
Right.
to compare, but
Mhm.
he's gonna have some serious numbers by the end.
Yeah.
So,
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's college football in a nutshell. It's going to come down to this weekend. This weekend is going to obviously be a lot of fun. Is there any specific game that you wanted to touch on for championship weekend?
a specific game. Let me see.
Because like that's the thing. I know there's a lot of implications for the playoff,
Yeah.
but like it makes the championship weekend a little bit less exciting, just because some teams have it kind of locked down.
Yeah, see, like the SEC championship and the Big Ten I'm gonna watch those, but I'm not the most excited about those. Like
Right.
Iowa State, Arizona State, I'm super excited to see those two programs
Mm-hmm.
get this shot that
Yeah.
they've rarely gotten. Seeing the rise that they've made. Shoot, Tulane Army.
Yeah.
Like these lower level conference championships, lower level quote unquote.
Right.
I'm excited to watch those. Like I want to see SMU beat Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't want to see Clemson win, and I don't even want to see them get in the playoff.
Yeah.
They still have a chance.
Right.
So I just want SMU to just like put it to rest
Mm-hmm.
and see them win. But yeah, all those games besides the big ones, I'm more excited for to watch.
Interesting.
And UNLV Boise at 8:00 should be really fun too.
Yeah. All right. Moving into college basketball, Michigan State, they have kind of been playing pretty good lately. They over the Thanksgiving break, they had the Maui Invitational. They beat Colorado pretty good, which was nice. Colorado had been pretty solid
Yeah.
coming into that game. And then Memphis, who has been one of the hotter teams in the country, they hung with them for most of the game. And then Memphis kind of put it on late and just kind of took over. But like we've seen, their guard play has been really good for Memphis. So Michigan State kind of struggling with that. But then they came back and played North Carolina, which North Carolina is starting to show they're not as good as their ranking maybe shows.
Yeah.
But they've lost to.
It's still a good win.
Yeah, they've lost
Yeah.
3, but they've lost to Kansas and
I thought
Auburn.
they're 6
So
and
they've-
2.
Well, I'm talking about UNC.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Well,
UNC is 4 and 3, but
Yeah.
they've lost to 2 ranked opponents, and then now MSU.
yeah.
And that's always a big rivalry game. And in that game, MSU shot the ball really well. They won 94-91 in overtime, and they got double digits from 6 different players: Trey Holloman, Jeremy Fears, Jaden Akins, Fiddler, Frankie Fiddler, Cohen Carr, and Xavier Booker, which was really nice to see everybody doing well and shooting the ball well.
Yeah. They only shot 25% from 3.
Yeah, we're not going to
But
talk
from the
about it.
field, they shot almost 55%.
Right. And then they kind of held UNC just in check for the most part. I forgot that RJ Davis was 100 years old on UNC,
Listen.
but he's there still.
Him and the guard they had a few years ago transferred to Arizona.
Let me look.
I forgot.
Oh,
his
you're
name.
talking about Caleb Love.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's still around, and he's
Yeah.
not doing that great this
No.
year.
But yeah.
He should have cashed in after they made the Final Four that year.
Right. So, like I said, UNC probably not as good as their rank, but they're still UNC. They've only lost to really good programs. So for Michigan State to get that win, I think was pretty good as we go into the Big Ten schedule. And tonight, actually, they're playing Minnesota,
Yeah.
which Minnesota's been a pretty solid team.
Well, I honestly don't think they're going to be that good.
No.
Yeah, I don't think so. Like they lost to Wichita State. They lost to North Texas.
Oh, okay.
Like they could be a middle of the pack team. Like Dawson Garcia is a like all Big Ten level guy. I just don't know if they have much around him.
Yeah.
So
So then they play Nebraska in it's on Saturday.
yeah,
They play Nebraska on Saturday, and then they get OU next
Little
Tuesday,
Caesars Arena, the annual
which
game.
I don't think OU is going to be competitive.
We're not talking about them.
But Michigan State, we keep talking about it. They're okay. I like that they kind of keep increasing Jace Richardson's minutes and time on the court, I think he's been the most consistent guy for them. And I think he needs to be probably a starter by the end of the year. And surprisingly lately, like Frankie Fiddler has been really good for the team. Like he's been one of the more consistent scorers, getting double digits almost every night. He's averaging 11.4 points a game. So he's been pretty good. But again, the biggest concern, 3-point shooting is awful. They're shooting 22% from three. And that's being held up by Jace Richardson shooting 54%.
Yeah.
Everybody else is.
And then Trey Holloman started really hot against North Carolina.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm hoping this team can get something going as the season moves on. Because again, I think their roster has some potential. They have depth to their team. I just think they need to figure out their rotation and what they're going to do going forward. But I do think there's a chance that they could, get into a rhythm and look really good. Like their upcoming schedule: Minnesota, Nebraska, Oakland, FAU, Western. Like they don't play anybody until the new year. And I think they got time to get rolling and then be good as, the season really kicks into gear as we hit the new year. So yeah. Then again, on the other side, Michigan, they've been playing well as well. They have one loss on the season, right?
Yeah.
So they have one loss on the season, and that was in their what tournament were they in?
It was against Wake Forest. It was a neutral site game. It really wasn't like a tournament.
Oh, it was like a showcase game, I think.
Yeah, it was one of the opening showcases.
Yes, right. But they've been playing well, and they just had a big win over Wisconsin. So Malik, let us know how you're feeling about Michigan.
I'm really liking what I'm seeing from this team so far. They have their new team moments. They have ups and downs where they look sloppy still.
Mm-hmm.
Some bad turnovers every now and then. Some like getting lost on defense every now and then. But they play hard. They seem connected for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
More connected than like a brand new team should, honestly. And each game, I'm encouraged with the fact that it seems like it's a different guy each game.
Right.
That can step up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, consistently, Danny Wolf has been really good.
Right.
Namari Burnett has been their best shooter, I think. But you could get like almost 20 from Roddy Gale. You could get like 15 and 8 from Trey Donaldson.
Mm-hmm.
You could have a game from Will Cheddar where he gives you like 12 off the bench and barely misses. Like you have a legit 6 or 7 guys that can break out for you. And I haven't even mentioned LJ Kaysen, who since the first 2 or 3 games of the season has kind of cooled off.
Right.
And they've like stuck to like a 6 or 7 man rotation of the vets.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you have a bunch of guys that all know what their roles are, all play hard on defense, and can show up in big moments.
Mm-hmm. And
this last game against Wisconsin, seeing Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden play off of each other like they did,
yeah,
it was so encouraging to see.
Mm-hmm.
Wisconsin is a hard place to play. They were ranked 11th. They blew out Arizona. John Sanjay is averaging 22 a game.
Mm-hmm.
But they took advantage of Wisconsin's bigs. Their bigs aren't really like the most powerful guys.
Right.
They're more finesse than like anything.
Mm-hmm.
And Vlad Golden took advantage of that in the post. Danny Wolf, they had a pick and roll game that was really interesting. 2 7-footers playing in the pick and roll.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Danny Wolf, he hit a few threes. He had like 27, 5, and 5.
Yeah.
Plus 3 steals. Like he was just all over the place and made an impact everywhere he needed to. And whenever a play needed to be made, he made it on both ends of the court. So I'm very encouraged with what they've done so far.
Yeah, and it's kind of like we said at the beginning of the season, like just having 2 7-footers in the Big Ten is just going to be so useful, and especially skilled 7-footers rather than just big bodies that are out there. If they can just get a little bit, I think they need a little bit more consistency out of their guard play going forward.
I'd agree.
But like you said, it could be anybody on any of those nights.
Yeah.
So if they get maybe just a third guy that kind of is a little more consistent, and then, you kind of put in certain guys that have a good night here and there, I think that would make this team a lot more complete.
Their main ball handlers are hit or miss a lot. like Trey Donaldson and Roddy Gale bring it up a lot. Danny Wolf also gets his times where he brings the ball up, like when he gets a rebound. But
Right.
yeah, Trey Donaldson had a really good game in the Fort Myers tip-off when they beat Xavier.
Mm-hmm.
Roddy Gale, I think when they beat Virginia Tech, Roddy Gale had like 20. So it's clear that they have it.
Right.
Yeah, they just haven't put them together consistently yet. But
Yeah.
I've really liked what they've done, and December isn't easy for them.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, they got Iowa at home. Iowa just beat Northwestern on a buzzer beater,
Mm-hmm.
a deep 3 by Josh Dix. It was a really cool buzzer beater.
Yeah. It was just an inbound turnaround, just go straight up.
Yeah, Iowa's known for being a jump shooting team that plays fast.
Yeah.
So it'll be another challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And then they play in the Jimmy V Classic against Arkansas.
Yep.
That's against John Calipari and that talented team.
Mm-hmm.
They could beat them. See what happens.
Right.
And then they play a hot Oklahoma team who I'm kind of wary of because they've got Jeremy Fears' little brother, actually, Jeremiah Fears.
Jeremy and Jeremiah.
Yeah, who he reclassed to play this season.
Okay.
And he's been a star.
Mm.
I mean, let me look at Jeremiah Fears' stats really quick.
17 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists,
Yeah.
2.5 steals.
Like every game, he's been the best point guard on the court, and he's like 17.
Hmm.
It's like wild how good he's been so far. So they've got challenges the next 3 games. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see what they do. And then they have Purdue, Fort Wayne, and Western Kentucky to finish December.
Yeah.
Before they start Big Ten play. So Dusty May is going to have them battle tested.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be good. Like I said, it's almost better to get these games out of the way. That's why I usually like Michigan State's schedule because they start like really front loaded.
Yeah.
Then they get a little bit of an ease, and then they get to Big Ten play. This year, Michigan State has besides the Maui Invitational, like they've had a pretty easy schedule going forward. So they're going to be a little bit slower ramp up. But I like when teams kind of do this where they mix and match. So it'll be good. We'll get a good idea of where Michigan is really at in the coming weeks. Alrighty. Outside of that, we'll touch on more college basketball as the season progresses because, again, a lot of conference play is going to start ramping up, and then we'll really get an idea of where these teams are at. Right now, to me, it's always so hard to pin down college teams early. So yeah. On to the NBA. We're just going to touch on the Pistons real quick. Pistons been playing pretty good once again. They went 3-1 in their pool play for the NBA Cup, whatever Eastern Conference group they're in. I don't really pay attention. I'll be 100% honest. But they've had some good wins in the last couple of weeks, but they've also had some really bad losses.
Mm-hmm. They're 4-6 in their last 10.
Yeah.
And there are a couple like blowouts.
Yeah, they played really good in their NBA Cup game against the Pacers, blew them out 130-106. Problem is the following night they lost to the 76ers, who don't have Joel Embiid.
Unfortunately, I was there, and the Sixers, they were getting open shots. They were hitting them often,
and
it was over quickly.
Paul George was back for that game, but limited minutes,
Yeah.
right? And so, like...
Yeah, me and my family left like in the middle of the third, so wanted to beat that traffic.
Yeah, and the Sixers are just really bad, so that was a tough loss. They also got blown out by the Grizzlies, and I believe that was without John Morant. Yeah, they didn't have John Morant that game, and the Pistons still lost.
Yeah.
Marcus Smart hit 7 threes on them. And the game before that, they beat the Raptors. They lost to the Magic before that. And then the Hornets are just their enemies right now. They can't beat the Hornets for some reason.
This is frustrating.
Yeah.
That they can't beat them.
And then last night, their final group play cup game against the Bucks. And the Bucks are one of those teams also that just have the Pistons number, and they stomped us. Giannis did whatever he wanted. I think Damian Lillard hit 6 or 7 threes in the game.
They shot over 70% from 3 in the first half. They just couldn't miss.
And they had like 78 points, I think, in the first half.
So it was like 78, like 60 or something. Yeah.
So it wasn't entirely the Pistons' fault, but I think it goes into they're just not a great defensive team. They're like giving up 111 points to the Sixers. Weird. but then blowing out the Pacers. Like, the team is just weird.
They're you get a different team
Yeah.
almost every night.
Now, I will say, because I went out and we watched the Pistons-Pacers game with Chris, and I did notice Jaden Ivey looks a lot more confident shooting the ball.
Yeah, he
and
does.
that is a plus. Now, again, I take things with a grain of salt because it is still early in the season. But so far, I think that's been a bright spot. Jaden Ivey's looked a lot more confident just in general. I think there's still a little bit of weirdness between him and Cade when they're on the floor together. Not that it's like they don't like each other or anything. It's just something about the chemistry doesn't match up entirely. And then Cade's been pretty solid this season. You know, his streak ended of having 10-plus assists. He had 10-plus assists in like so many games in a row that was tied Isaiah Thomas's record or something. And that ended last night. But he's been pretty good. Again, he's kind of inconsistent at the same time, I feel like, with Cade. And again, he's not like a defensive guy. So I don't know.
He makes some standout defensive plays, but he's not like a sit-down, lockdown guy.
Yeah. And so just watching this Pistons team is just odd at times. Now, Malik Beasley has also been a bright spot. He's just jacking up threes, but, I mean, I like it because we need something.
Yeah.
We need some sort of spark, and he's had some pretty good games for the most part. Tobias Harris, I like that he's been in that kind of just a veteran role. He's not trying to do too much, but he's doing things at the right time.
I don't think he's doing much at the right time, but we can move on to after that Sixers game. I'm kind of souring on him.
So
he was terrible against the Sixers.
Okay, well, I just don't need him to do a whole lot. I just need him to step up in certain games, and that was probably one of them.
Listen, I want him to average like at least 15. Like, come on.
Yeah,
he's been a guaranteed like 17 a game for most of his career.
Yeah, but
now he can barely. It seems like he can barely like hit shots right now.
Yeah, but I just don't know if he should be. He should be like a fourth option on this.
Who should be averaging? Who should be the third leading scorer then after Cade and Ivy?
I'm tempted to say Malik Beasley just because I think at this point he's a better shooter than Tobias.
He absolutely is.
But I do get nervous because Malik is very streaky, that he can have those games where he's, 3 for 13 from the three. That's kind of hurtful, but I think I would rather have him than Tobias. So, yeah. I think the big disappointment, which, I mean, we all knew could be a high variance signing, was Tim Hardaway. He's been very...
He had a few hot games to open in the first few weeks, but...
Yeah, but he hasn't done much since. He's
Tim Hardaway.
Really weird.
I didn't expect
But do you remember, like, a couple years ago, Tim Hardaway was fantastic.
After last season.
He was averaging like 15, 16 a game.
My expectations dropped after last season.
I know. But I'm just saying, I kept thinking maybe there's a chance he could revitalize his career, but he's struggled in the last 2 years or so. So overall,
Jalen Duren has also been really hit or miss.
Yeah.
He has some good games, and then he has games where he just won't defend.
Right.
Most people.
Now, something that we brought up when we were watching the game is that the Bulls are shopping Zach LaVine, which we know that's been forever. But they're also shopping my boy Vooch, Nikola Vucevic. Would you want him as a Piston? Potentially. Not that it's going to happen or anything.
I mean, he would give them more production.
Theoretically. And what would you be willing...
He would get them over the 30. He would help get them over the 30-win hump.
What would you be willing to give up? I want to say they were saying 2 second-round picks or something, but I would assume because of the money, you're going to have to give up a solid player, too.
Yeah. They'd have to trade, like, Sasser or something, like one of those younger guys.
Would you trade, like, Beef Stew?
Yeah. Yeah. I trade Beef Stew.
Okay. I'm just curious.
Then what would you do with Duren? Like, what would you do at that point?
You would just keep – I think that's a good point because we're playing Tobias at the 4.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'd say just have Duren come off the bench and be like, "Hey, man, you're not being that guy that we need you to be."
I don't know how much that would go over well. I don't know if team morale would be very high.
Maybe, but
with that,
see, my problem is like, just suck it up. You're not playing that good. like you realistically wouldn't be the starter if there was somebody better.
But I feel like Cade and Jaden, I feel like they're like really close and like believe in each other.
I get that, but
And
when you're not
like,
producing,
yeah,
you're not
like
producing.
well, he's a really weird case because you look at his numbers during games and it's like he's producing.
Yeah.
But then you watch the game and it's like,
That's why I
yeah.
said he's turning into the Andre Drummond effect, where
it's not as annoying as Andre because of all that extra stuff. But
but he's got like the stats, but just the eye test just isn't. It's not
Yeah.
working out. So I don't know. I would need to find a way to like light a fire under him. I don't know how that is. I don't know his personality or anything, but I feel like making a move for another center would possibly do that. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe these young guys are just way too soft these days.
I have one thought before we move on.
Okay.
There's a chance Ron Holland could be good. He's good defensively.
Would you?
He's athletic.
Okay, that was
But-
something else we brought up.
I think they may have messed up again
Mhm.
because he hasn't had a single standout offensive game.
Yeah.
And Matas Buzelis is looking nice right now.
I don't care.
And
I
I was-
told you I don't care what he
I
does.
was adamant against Matas Buzelis. And I'm seeing him hit like 4 or 5 threes,
Yeah.
and he's easily just like flying to the rim.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, why can't we just have a rookie that steps in and does that?
Again,
And this is past the Dalton Connect.
mm-hmm.
He's too old to be a lottery pick thing, which we both wanted Dalton Connect,
Right.
but nobody was going to take him.
Yeah. But you look at
Stupid.
even guys like Bub Carrington. When he's gotten minutes, now he's gone back to a bench role since Malcolm Brogdon came
Yeah.
back. But when he was
Bub
starting,
is a bucket.
he was playing great. He was
Yeah.
averaging like 20 points a game almost. So I agree with you.
Another potential pick where he hasn't flashed any offense yet.
Like that was the scenario we brought up though.
The
Like,
Buzelis thing, it has really bothered me. Seeing him flash
I don't
like
care
this.
about Buzelis. I told you I don't care about what he does.
When
I
Ron
don't
Holland
want
is
him on
doing
my
nothing
team.
and he's doing things,
I don't want to be associated with Modest Buzelis.
what did he do to you?
I don't know.
This seems like an extra personal thing.
Like
I'm not saying like we should have taken him, but it bothers me and annoys me seeing him have like major offensive flashes and Ron Holland just still isn't doing anything.
well, that's just how I feel about all these rookies. Like I feel like this rookie class is actually doing not too bad. Like even like
well, then that hurts even more because Ron Holland hasn't had a single standout offensive
I think
moment.
that's more of what I'm saying. Is it doesn't feel like it's a.
Like, it feels like we might have messed up again.
It doesn't necessarily feel like it's a talent thing. It feels like it's a Pistons thing, and I
Maybe.
don't. I'm not sure where it
Maybe.
is. But I agree. Like that's
But
something we brought up.
They've made back-to-back picks of guys that don't have like
Right.
full offensive
Yeah.
things and are projects.
Yeah. That's why I didn't love the Ron Holland draft. I was accepting of it because he has a higher ceiling.
In the moment, I accepted it over Matas.
Yeah. I think because
Which,
he has
yeah.
a higher ceiling than most of these guys, but are you going to get it out of him? I'm not sure.
That's why I was like, I expected to see something so far
Mhm.
where like he hasn't had, has he had like a 15-point game yet?
Probably not.
I don't
No, probably
like,
not. And that's the thing. Like we brought up the other night of like, if the Bulls came to you and they're like, we'll give you both Zach LaVine and Vucevic, but you have to include like 2 seconds, maybe a first. I don't know how it would work. And then like Isaiah Stewart, Ron Holland, and maybe one salary dump or something like that. Like, would you do that?
it still just seems it's too awkward to me with Duran and Boots, but
Okay.
yeah. It's just too awkward in my head.
Would you give up Jalen Duren and Ron Holland and 2 second-round picks?
I don't know how the Bulls would make that trade just to get rid of the contract.
Yeah.
I mean,
They just want out of Zach LaVine at this point. There might be more pieces.
I mean,
Again,
you get
I don't
better
know the
players
math.
back.
I don't have the math.
you
but-
get better players back, but that would be a weird meshed roster again, kind of like Blake Griffin-esque.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
It'd be weird. They'd be a better team.
Right. I think that's just the thing is like, at this point, I'm almost okay with that kind of move because now all of a sudden we're not the youngest team in the league, and all of a sudden
You might make the play-in.
right, and all of a sudden we get Cade, we get Jaden, playoff experience, and find out where they're at.
Yeah.
That's my only thought, maybe. But I agree. It could be weird, but just food for thought because it's going to be interesting. The Pistons might be doing something by the trade deadline this year. All right, finishing it off with the NFL, and I have a proposal.
Okay.
Do you want to just nix the whole picks thing now that we're on every other week? Because we forgot to do picks again.
Yeah.
Last week.
We could.
We could just get back to talking
And just do game previews.
and talking about football because I think it's interesting where the Lions are at, and I think just the playoff scenarios right now, especially in the NFC, because the big topic right now is that the Lions keep winning. They're 11-1. The problem is the Eagles keep winning. The Vikings keep winning. The Packers keep winning. So the Lions aren't making any ground on any of these teams to lock in like that number 1 seed. And it's starting to make people nervous because at the same time, the Lions are losing every single player on their defensive front, it feels like. And they've lost almost all of their defensive starters from the beginning of the season. And, I mean, they keep winning, but you keep thinking, when are they going to hit that second roadblock? Luckily, the first one was early in the season against Tampa Bay. Now they've won 10 straight. But now they have a rough part of their schedule. They play Green Bay on tomorrow.
Thursday, yeah.
And then they play the Bills the following week, which is going to be a really good game.
Is it here in Buffalo?
It's here.
That
So
helps.
that's
but
a helpful thing.
But Buffalo has some confidence right now.
Yeah. And Josh Allen is crazy. And I can't remember the last time that the Lions faced Josh Allen, so that'll be interesting to see.
It was Thanksgiving. Was it 2 years ago or last year? Not Thanksgiving, but
I
it was
think
a
I know
holiday
what you're
game.
Huh.
Because they were.
Oh, yeah,
they
it
were-
was Thanksgiving.
Yeah, they were going to beat the Bills, and the Bills ended up winning in the last minute.
You're right. Yeah, that might have been 2 years ago.
It might have been. Yeah.
Anyway, so I think that's going to be interesting. Then they play the Bears again, and that is at Chicago, which is going to be tough.
Weather game. Who knows how
'cause
that goes?
It's going to be cold. And then they have San Francisco, which San Francisco is not as scary as they were.
Yeah, they're
They have
struggling.
fallen apart. Christian McCaffrey on IR, Jordan Mason on IR. And then for the last game of the season could be for the division if things keep going wildly against Minnesota. So I think there's a little bit of concern there. How are you feeling about the Lions? Like, I'm confident. I'm still good, but it's just annoying, I think, at this point for me. How do you feel about it?
It's starting to. They're still in a good position, but all the injuries mounting up, it doesn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing like you just had to get Quan Alexander off the Broncos practice squad, Jamal Adams.
Yeah, you're getting all these old guys.
Yeah, like it would be great if they just stepped into this winning culture and had like a boost all of a sudden.
Yeah, I do
like
feel
a
like
few years back.
I do feel like maybe Jamal Adams could flip a switch because he's still kind of young. And I think
He's not even 30 yet.
yeah, I think you're right. He's probably like 28, 29. But he had such a short, kind of quick stint of being Pro
Yeah.
Bowl level.
He was elite for like 3 years in New York.
Yeah.
And then got shipped to Seattle.
And now he's more of a linebacker than a safety.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if like because of the way that he's been talking, that this coaching staff can actually get him back into gear, and that would be a big boost, I think.
Yeah, he's still super athletic, can go and he has high level instincts.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm not sure.
Right.
I'm really not sure. Like every week you have different combinations of starters. It seems
Mm-hmm.
the offense has to stay on point for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Like, do they have to finish 16-1?
I know that's how it feels, and I think that's the annoying part.
It's strange that they can't have any cushion.
Right. Because even last
Like
week,
14-3 should be really good.
yeah, even last week you thought, okay, Minnesota's losing to Arizona. Arizona's not playing too bad. They should be able to wrap this up. And then
Minnesota is
Minnesota takes them in. Was that the overtime game or the week before? Oh no, that was the week before. So yeah, back-to-back weeks. Minnesota went to Chicago, won in overtime.
Yeah.
Which was crazy. And then last week they played Arizona and they got like another game-winning field goal. So it's like we just can't catch a break. Same with Green Bay. Like Green Bay hasn't looked that good overall, I would say. But they're still 9-3. They keep winning games. And then the Eagles are the only like exception to that. They've just been really good the last few weeks. But it's just annoying when the Lions are playing good. All of a sudden, the division is really good again. And like the NFC North is the best division in football, which is wild. So like normally, like the Green Bay Packers, if you look, they have a similar record to the Bills. Bills just locked up the AFC East already. The Packers are third in the NFC North.
It is wild.
So, like, what do you do? So as a Lions fan, that's the annoying thing. But again, huge game tomorrow, obviously. Basically can shut the Packers out of the NFC North. But the Vikings they're on one of those seasons again, like they were 2 years ago with Kirk Cousins when they lost to the Giants in the playoffs. Like they just kept winning 1-point games, and they're kind of doing that again. And that's why people are like, oh, Kevin O'Connell should be the coach of the year because he's doing it with Sam Darnold. But we've seen this in the past. So I don't know. The Lions, they're looking good. The defense is just a little bit spooky at the moment. Hopefully they can just keep getting maximum effort out of guys. And even when Malcolm Rodriguez came in for Alex Anzalone, now he's on IR. And it's just like we can't catch a break necessarily. The other thing that I was going to bring up is, do you think at this moment, because this has been the hot topic, that the Lions are good enough to beat the Eagles as they stand with the injuries and all that? Or are you not?
Yes.
Or have you flipped to the Eagles?
I think they can. I think it would take like damn near perfect offensive performance.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think the Eagles' passing offense isn't like great.
Yeah.
Now Saquon like neutralizes most things. He's almost the MVP of the NFL. He's been amazing.
Right.
And what they did to the Ravens was super impressive.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest concern to me because going into that game, I thought, okay, well, the Lions match up good against Philly because Saquon is their best player. Lions are really good at stopping the run. Like you said, their passing game is kind of not as good, especially with Devontae Smith being hurt. Now Dallas Goedert.
Like A.J. Brown are busts for the most part.
Yeah, and I think A.J. Brown would get his against the Lions, but we've just shown that we can stop people when we get to the red zone. But, man, when Saquon ran all over the Ravens are the best team against the run, and the Lions are, like, not too far behind. That made me a little nervous again. So I kind of agree. I think it'd have to be a almost perfect game. But, again, I think the Lions could also just run the ball really well against Philly.
Yeah.
And although Philly's passing defense is better nowadays, I still think they have so much of the underneath working well for the Lions that they don't have to take too many deep shots, that's how they could kind of dink and dunk their way down the field. But it would definitely be a really fun matchup. That's why I think if like the Lions played the Eagles in the NFC Championship and then the Bills in the Super Bowl would be a dream scenario, I think, for me to watch. But so far they've looked good. Do you think the Bills are the number one team in the AFC at the moment?
Are the Bills the number one team in the AFC?
Or are you a believer in Kansas City? Or some other team?
I like Buffalo more than Kansas City, but Kansas City has.
Or are you back on the Steelers bandwagon
behind them? I'm not on the Steelers bandwagon. What they're doing is impressive, especially Russ like balling again.
Mm-hmm.
It is something else to see. The Steelers could make a run, but I don't trust most of these teams' defenses.
Yeah,
I really don't. Like Cincinnati was still punching back with Pittsburgh.
Right.
I don't know, man. I don't know if there's like a defined number one team. Like the Chiefs have one loss, but does anybody trust them?
Right.
I don't think nobody trusts them, but they also think they're gonna win just because it just keeps happening over and over again.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I can pick a top team because after that Ravens, a lot of people thought the Ravens,
right?
But then they lost that game.
Mm-hmm. They've been struggling. Houston was the hot favorite coming into the season. They've been struggling.
They've lost their mojo.
All of a sudden, the Chargers are 8-4, but they're going to play Kansas City this Sunday, so that's a huge game. I would love it. I love seeing Justin Herbert throw the ball. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch.
It is wild how bad the AFC South consistently is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is strange.
Yeah. And I mean,
Houston has just been decent, and they're still number one in that.
Yeah, well, and Jacksonville is a whole nother mess that I don't even know how to understand it.
R.I.P. Trevor Lawrence. He ain't dead. He's just concussed.
R.I.P. Travis Etienne. He's not dead. He just lost his talent to the Monstars or something. I don't know. I don't know what happened there. But yeah, it's weird. And then the Dolphins, they've struggled this season. Like, all of a sudden they're talking about, should Mike McDaniels be fired? Like, what is going on with
his offensive magic seemed to be wearing off.
Yeah. Cincinnati just can't win. There's a lot of weird teams this year.
Yeah.
Cincinnati, Miami. I think Jacksonville.
The Broncos are a secretly good team.
Yeah.
And Bo Nix has gotten better.
Right. And then like on the NFC side, like San Francisco is struggling. That's a weird one. I know they've had injuries, but just
Dallas fell off. Before the injuries, they weren't good.
Right. Yeah. Chicago, who people thought, oh man, Chicago was going to be this really good team this year with Caleb Williams and DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. 4-8. They just can't figure out how to win games. So it's a weird season as usual. And then Seattle, all of a sudden, they're the 3rd seed in the NFC, and they're 7-5. So I don't know. It's going to be a fun end to the season as we get close with the NFL, I think. But yeah, it's odd. Aaron Rodgers sucks. It's kind of fun to see. But I don't know. The Lions are good, and that's all that matters at the moment.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to ride that into the sunset as long as I can. But starts with tomorrow, big game tomorrow, then the following week against the Bills. If they can win those 2 games, I think we'll be good. But those are probably the 2 scary games that they have. Unless there's really bad weather in Chicago, then I would say that's another one. But all right. Anything else that you got on your mind?
I don't think there's anything else that really stands out. I'm just listen. I can't believe how well a 7-5 season has ended for Michigan in football.
Yeah.
And Dusty May's off to a great start in basketball. It seems impossible that both of those teams could be good at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be happening.
Yeah. Michigan
might
athletics
be the new golden era.
On the rise.
Yeah.
Michigan State.
We'll
not
see.
really going anywhere.
Yeah.
But anyway, this has been Views from the Sidelines. We'll talk to you guys in 2 weeks.